There was a preacher, a very large man, who he served this one church that had one of those staircases. And I apologize, that picture didn't turn out very well, but some of you have probably seen these churches that have staircases that go up into this pulpit. And so that day he wanted to dramatize the sudden and unexpected return of Jesus. So he stood in that pulpit and he thundered, "Behold, I am coming soon," grabbed hold of the pulpit. Second time he lunged into that pulpit and he said, "Behold, I am coming soon." And then a third time he yelled out, "Behold, I am coming soon." And he lunged into the pulpit. And as he did that, the poor old pulpit broke away and he tumbled right into the front row where this elderly woman, this elderly woman that was sitting right there. And he got himself up and he straightened himself up and he apologized profusely to the woman that was right in front of him. And she says, "Oh, that's okay. You warned me you were coming 3 times. Nothing like being prepared. Christmas season sure instills that in us. I don't think we have to go too far to see how this season is marketed to us. I first saw it the week of Halloween. Not Halloween Day, but actually the week of Halloween, I started seeing the first moments of Christmas being sold in the stores. Now that Thanksgiving is behind us and the Black Friday sales are behind us, it's now a full-blown assault, marching right on to Christmas. I mean, think of that checklist. Okay, got to get the lights and decorations up. Check. Plan that Christmas party. Check. Send out those Christmas cards, those of us that do. Check. Watch the weather reports, because some of us are traveling. Check. Schedule in that Christmas program at school. Check. When is that sale on Amazon and eBay? Check. We got that gift for Uncle Larry. Yeah, check. When is the Christmas Eve service? Okay, check. Well, at least birth of Christ is in there somewhere. Thanksgiving is truly behind us. We've got the decorations up here. The purple is outlined right here. Maybe even some of us have already stuffed away a few gifts that we got this weekend. I mean, it signifies one thing: a new season, new lessons, a new sermon series. This we're calling Advent Conspiracy. So, what is Advent Conspiracy? Well, our Sunday school classes are going to be following these lessons. This book, this movement, which is authored by Rick McKinley, Chris Shea, and Greg Holder, in their work, this is what they have to say. This kind of gives us an idea of a preview of what Advent Conspiracy is all about. They write, "Several years ago, a few of us friends were lamenting how much we hate pastoring at Christmas. We shared our dread of preparing to proclaim, celebrate, and worship Jesus at his incarnation, while we, along with our congregations, are consumed with idolatry. We become lost in crowded malls, financial debt, and endless likes of gifts to buy. The false doctrine of consumer religion insists again and again that money equals love, a convincing enough tale to make believers out of non-Christians and Christians alike. We were afraid that on Christmas Day God would come near, as God always does and always is, and we would miss it yet again. So we decided to try an experiment. What if, instead of acting like bystanders to the Nativity, we led our congregations into the Nativity story as participants? We didn't know what to expect, but we knew we needed to reclaim the story of Christmas, the foundational narrative of the church. As we strove to see the birth of Christ from inside the stable instead of inside the mall, our holiday practices began to change. If it doesn't take money to love, a recalculation is needed. If love is to be the driving force of our gift giving, then money cannot be. Our dominating culture of consumerism can and must be rejected. When we refuse to equate money with love, we become free. free to leave the shallow story of cultural Christmas and enter the deep, life-giving waters of the Incarnation. Free to give without compassion, receive with gratitude, and worship with abandon. This is what Advent Conspiracy is all about. Because we know that this season is going to be full of distractions, consumption, and busyness. And it is so easy to focus on the doing of Christmas than on the meaning. James W. Moore is an author, a prolific author, and a retired pastor from Houston. In fact, he has written so many books that I've told our adult Sunday school class that we are going to have so many lessons and devotion work for years to come. And it's good stuff. Recently, I've been reading his book, Healing Where It Hurts. And he writes a very interesting story that is very timely today. The summer of 1964 was a significant one for our family because God had just blessed our home with our first child, a little girl. We named her Jody, and we were so proud of her. When she was about 2 months old, we decided it was time to take her to show her off to relatives and friends. So I began the mammoth task of loading the car with all the things you have to take along with you when you go somewhere with a 2-month-old baby. I worked and planned and packed. Finally, I had everything strategically located in the car. Then I sat down behind the steering wheel, feeling hot and tired, anxious to get on the road, and extremely proud of myself for the ingenious way I had miraculously packed all that baby paraphernalia into our little compact car. When my wife, June, came out the carport door, I started up the engine ready to go. "Wait just a minute," she said. "Aren't you about to forget something?" A little offended by that question, I answered, "That's impossible. I have my checklist here and everything is in the car. Checked and double-checked. Just look, suitcases, vaporizer, bassinet, playpen, diapers, diaper bag, bottles, pacifier, formula, baby food, infant seed, powder, shampoo, and brownie bear." "Well," she said, "that's all very nice, but don't you think we should take the baby along as well?" Sure enough, I had thought of everything, but the main thing, the baby was in her room sound asleep. Then James W. Moore says something that really hits home with today's lesson and the sermon series. He writes, "I have thought about that incident many times since, because I see in it a powerful parable for life. Sometimes we get so involved in the busyness of life, the details, the mechanics, the trappings, and the checklists, that we forget the most important things." What are we forgetting today? What details have we missed as we make preparations for Christmas? Can Christmas move beyond the busyness of the season to the very meaning of what it's all about? This season of Advent, we're focusing on Advent Conspiracy for a reason. Because Christmas will be different. Worship will be our priority. Because Jesus will be our focus. Now I'm going to ask Shirley to read to us our passage for today.
Scripture comes from Luke 21:25-38. "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waters. People will faint from fear and foreboding it as it's coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will face the Son of Man coming in as a cloud, with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." Then he told them a parable. "Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away, and all things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on guard so that your heart are not weighed down with the dissipation and the drunkenness of the worries of this life, and that the day does not catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have the strength to escape all these things that will take place and to stand before the Son of Man.
Thank you. Luke is quite clear. Worship fully means preparing our hearts for the day of Christmas. I know some of you still like to read the comic strips. Ted, I'm not going to say anything about that. But some of you may be familiar with The Wizard of Id. If you're not familiar with this comic strip, there is two characters in particular I want to tell you about. There's a jailer, someone who is outside the jail, and there is Spook, who is the person that's inside the cell. Well, one of these stories that ran on Christmas morning went something like this. Spook he's inside the jail. He's asked by the jailer, "What's that noise?" And the Spook says, "I'm trimming the tree." "Very funny," said the jailer. So that with that, the jailer looks in the cell, and indeed the tree was trimmed, but the only thing that was left was two sticks, one that was going vertical and one was going horizontal. And the jailer says, "Nice going. You've ruined the symbol of Christmas." Get it? Okay, what's left? There you go. Takes a little while. Advent conspiracy is a reminder that what our focus needs to be on during this season. It needs to be on Jesus. But surprisingly, this is actually a controversial issue whenever a church decides to do Advent conspiracy. Came across a magazine article from the magazine Post Consumers, and they had this to say. Every year around this time, we start bemoaning how much Americans consumers buy into the social construct of Black Friday. And while we're doing this, we place a significant amount of blame on retailers and consumer product companies for feeding the beast. But the truth is that the beast is a two-part beast. As much as retailers have propagated the idea of holiday shopping and Black Friday shopping, consumers have also fed the beast by cornering retailers into a position where they're dependent upon Black Friday and holiday sales. Because consumers are waiting for Black Friday deals, they hold off on shopping at other times. And because retailers know that consumers are waiting for Black Friday deals, they pay into the system. Nobody is free of blame here in our unsustainable economic framework. But how much are retailers relying on holiday sales, kicking off with the Black Friday event? According to the National Retail Foundation, the total amount spent in 2014, last time when full figures are available, between Thanksgiving Thursday and the Sunday following Thanksgiving was $50.9 billion. We understand that the number we just quoted may represent a drop for retailers, and it did, but it's still an enormous amount of money being pumped into the consumer machine. In fact, the same report estimates that the average amount spent by a shopper over Black Friday weekend was just over $380. We're fine with the idea that from a business perspective, retailers need to track year-over-year spend and successes. But nobody should confuse the year-over-year drop with an indication that consumerism isn't alive and well over Black Friday weekend. It's certainly alive and well. In fact, it's got a big, strong heartbeat. Last year, I helped Olivia deliver the newspapers for the Star-Herald. And to make sure that Thanksgiving went off the way it was supposed to, we were told about a few weeks before and reminded about every few days that the Thanksgiving paper was going to be the biggest paper yet. In fact, it was going to be bigger than the Sunday edition. And to ensure that we got that newspaper out on Thanksgiving morning, the Star-Herald told us two things. One is we would get a bonus that day. And 2, they would deliver it on Wednesday night, just so that we could have it in time to get it on Thursday morning. Right here is the ads from Thursday of this year. How thick that was. Do you see the importance of the economy of Christmas shopping? And it's not just gift buying. In November, we had some beautiful weather. We had people that went out and they decorated their houses because it was nice weather to get it done. Now, friends, I have nothing against the trappings of Christmas. It helps us get into that festive spirit. And I do love this time. In fact, one of the things that I miss about delivering newspapers in the morning is that chance to see the Christmas displays that are out. But like that story from James W. Moore, we can get so focused on the checklist that we forget to worship fully. I think we get so consumed by the gift buying and the Christmas greetings and the year-end concerts and everything else on the list that we forget the reason for the season. Advent conspiracy is not just one more thing this season. It's not just one more thing on the list. It is not just one more thing to get accomplished on our march towards Christmas Eve. It is a radically different way of living out this season. Let me tell you a story. It comes from the central region of Ghana. It was on my first visit to Africa. We were driving past this school on our way out to this remote village out in Ghana. And on our left was the school, and on our right was this well. And when we stopped at that well, all these kids came out. They had to demonstrate to us about how to do that well. And we were told that that well was there because people in that region would, not only was that school available for kids to come and receive an education, but they would also bring with them water jugs. And they would fill up water from that well, and then they would take it back to their village. And so some of us who had kids asked, what happens when your child gets sick and can't go to school that day? Because we know that happens to us parents. The response was quite chilling. Well, their village doesn't have clean water that day. Triaco, that's the organization that is pictured there. In fact, the gentleman clear off on the left is the executive director of that organization. That's who we're sponsoring for Advent Conspiracy. In fact, he told us that one of the things that they do is their goal is to put wells in each of those villages so that in case a child is sick, that village won't go without clean water. But that gentleman told me, I think his name is Samuel, I got to look that up, told me that it takes time, takes money, and it takes resources. So the idea around Advent Conspiracy, we're going to hear a video about this here pretty soon, is the idea is that we, through that season, give up one gift. Just one gift this season. And instead, that money from that one gift go to an offering to Triaco. One gift to providing clean water to just that little region in Ghana. Because today, the lesson for us is that our focus needs to be what this season is all about. Because if we get to Christmas Day and we're exhausted from opening presents and preparing the dinner and traveling out to our relatives and thanking God that we only have to do this once a year, we've lost sight of why we worship. Worship fully means doing something radically different this year. And placing Christ in the center is where it needs to be. So I'm going to have a video played, and this is actually from the authors of this movement from the Advent Conspiracy.
The incarnation of Christ is what makes Christianity different from every other faith. It's that God came from heaven to earth to be present with us.
It is the idea of God himself stepping into the story, and it now informs how we are to move into the world.
You're talking about one of those theological high points of the scriptures. And we're doing that in the context of people just rushing in chaos to malls.
Advent conspiracy is an invitation to celebrate the story of Christmas, not just by remembering, not just by proclaiming, but actually by living out the story of Christmas.
It's an attempt to recapture the beauty of Christmas. If we're going to celebrate the birth of Christ, we thought maybe it should be actually about Jesus rather than the things that too often consume us.
It's a chance for us to worship fully. It's an opportunity for us to love in a real practical way.
The first year it was this complete experiment. We were kind of going, well, we don't know what's going to happen.
Handful of churches.
Yeah, people might riot. There's just 5 churches. And then what happened was this overwhelming response. I mean, people going, this changed Christmas for us. Hundreds of thousands of dollars raised for well water.
My kids got it better than sometimes my wife and I did. We were still tempted to go out and get them some big extravagant gift that they didn't really need. But they got very clearly that Christmas should be about Jesus.
The Advent Conspiracy really isn't as much of an organization as a movement. It's an invitation for churches to enter into the story of Christ, and through the creativity of the Spirit of God in their own faith communities and families, they decide what that expression is going to look like.
Yeah, the time I used to dread now I love. I can't wait until Christmas.
I know that Christmas is right around the corner. And that's what this purple means. That's what the one candle that is lit reminds us that this is a time of preparation, of anticipation, but more importantly, of worshiping fully. It makes Christmas real. And I think it makes a difference this year, and especially on what we need to focus. I want to share one final story with you. Sometime back, there was a TV drama, and in it was a nurse. She was a single mom. Her husband had left her with 3 children, twin girls, and a boy that was about 16. Her dad had fallen and broken his hip, and she didn't have enough money or time to get off work to go and see him, even though he wanted to, but she could just, and he said, that's okay, I know that you're busy, but she still felt the guilt. She felt lousy, tired, worn out, especially when just the month before she had the flu. Never took the time to get over it. Then that one evening, she discovers drugs in her son's bedroom, and there's a terrible fight. And she cries miserably through the night. The next day at work is a total disaster. She has a confrontation with another nurse and loses her composure with an irritable patient. Then one of her favorite patients dies. While she was still processing that sad event, she bumped into an orderly spilling a meal tray. She walks home with a feeling of utter despair. On the way, she passes an old brownstone church. Inside, she can still hear carols being sung. Something pulls her inside. She sits in the back. There she sees the typical children's reenactment of the nativity scene, complete with makeshift robes, a manger, Mary and Joseph, and the baby. But there's something different about the baby in this manger. It's not a doll. It's a real baby. And it's doing what real babies do, trying to create havoc. She sees the baby raise its hand and try to pull Mary's nose. Then it starts getting fussy. Finally begins to cry. Not a gentle cry, but a full-throttled scream. Nobody can hear the boy reading at the lectern. A woman leaves her pew and takes the baby in her arms. It has a little effect. The congregation sings Silent Night as the baby, with the strongest set of lungs in the county, is taken noisily from the sanctuary. The service is over. Somehow the weary nurse now feels energized. It was a real baby, the nurse marvels to herself. Jesus was a real baby. It was not just a story. He cried, and he fussed, and he messed, and he caused his mother anguish. He was one of us, just like us. Then she thinks to herself, God really cares about us. God really cares about real life. She becomes radiant at the thought. She buttons her coat and steps from the church into the cold streets. She smiles at strangers. Something in her has changed. All that in the realization that Jesus was real. Jesus is real. Jesus is the focus for this season. And to make this change possible, I invite you into the story. Make it real. Make this season real again. Join Advent Conspiracy and worship fully for the first time again. Amen. At this time, I'm going to ask the ushers